Greetings, business law. I'm here to continue your notes on your poster board today. So if you don't already have that out, you may want to get that out before you get started today. So you may want to pause the video and then get that out. We're going to continue with a discussion about some information regarding the appellate courts. They should be in the middle between your federal and state. Remember, we had trial courts and appellate courts listed there. There's a couple other pieces that I want you to add to the appellate courts, other than they have appellate jurisdiction. I also want you to include that an appellate court uses a transcript, which is a verbatim record of what went on in trial. So if you'll draw a little picture, uh, maybe a little piece of paper, and then you can do squiggly lines for the words, and that'll represent a transcript, and you can just label transcript above the top. And basically that's gonna, when they review a case in an appellate court, because that's what appellate courts do, they would read through what happened at the previous trial and arguments from lawyers on both sides to see if there's any reason to reverse the decision, um, or uphold the decision. They can also send the court back to trial if they want to. So you can uphold, you can reverse, or you can send the trial back to the trial court, and they can retry the case. So those are three things that can happen in an appellate scenario. Um, those arguments that the lawyers write, you're going to want to put this on there. Put appellate briefs. All right, appellate briefs, and just know that those are notes that the lawyers have. Okay, if you want to put a picture of lawyers there with holding paper in their hand, you could do that, but it's absolutely not necessary. You can just put the word appellate briefs there, and I think you'll have an idea of what they're for. All right, that should finish off the appellate portion. I just wanted to make sure I got that added because we did start talking about federal courts. I want to move on to that next. Um, so within the federal courts, we were talking about trial courts yesterday as we concluded the hour. Before we continue with the trial courts in the federal level, on the federal side of things, I want you to go up to the Supreme Court, and I want you to put this in there, this portion right here. It says writ of certiorari. I want you to put that up there. Okay, and this is a document that has to be completed and submitted to the Supreme Court for them to even consider looking at your case. You have to have what's called a writ of certiorari. Okay, so there's also this set of slides is in your notes, and you can take a look at what it takes to get a case to the Supreme Court with this little scenario here. But somehow identify that you need a writ of certiorari for them to even look at it. So maybe put a pair of glasses and then an arrow pointing at the Supreme Court, and that's at the state and federal levels. You have to complete one of these in order to for them to even consider looking at your case. Doesn't mean they will, but you have to complete a writ of certiorari to do that. Okay, so that should take care of the Supreme Courts. Hopefully the glasses didn't get on your pizza. I know, terrible jokes. We're going to go back to jurisdiction now, because there's some other jurisdictions that we need to make sure we understand. You probably, I believe we talked about yesterday, general jurisdiction, which is what the Supreme Courts have. They can hear any kinds of cases. We also talked about special jurisdiction. Hopefully you have that on there. If not, put that near the special courts, which I would use tax courts as your example. So tax courts are only going to hear specific tax related law cases. And so they have special jurisdiction just to hear those specific types of cases. They don't hear anything else. Okay? So then, after we get that done, your trial courts at the federal level, excuse me, are the federal district courts. So they're going to be the first to hear a case at the federal level. We actually have a federal district court downtown Wichita, and I've been there for jury duty. So I didn't get picked, and we've talked about that before, so I won't go into great detail. But some of the things that take your case to a federal district court, and you can find this piece of information on page 55. But try to put in there. Make sure you put federal district court if you haven't already, and then you're going to plug this information in to go along with it. So one of the things to be able to have your case heard at that level It has to involve a federal question, so you might just put Fed with a question mark. It has to deal with the Constitution. Um, it has to deal with lawsuits of citizens from between U.S. citizens and citizens from another country. Um, it can also have what's called interstate commerce or intrastate commerce. I'm sorry, intrastate commerce. Um, the let's see the difference between interstate commerce and intrastate commerce. Interstate commerce is laws that are broken between two citizens in different states. The federal government will deal with that. Intrastate commerce is a scenario where something has happened between two citizens of the same state, but it may be different cities. And that'll actually be held or taken care of at the state level. Um, so that's another way the federal district courts can get involved. You'll also notice in your text it talks about citizens who have cases that are $75,000 or more. Those disputes will also be taken to federal district court. Okay, so make sure you have something relative to that near your federal district courts to identify what kinds of courts or what kinds of issues that court deals with. All right. Your federal courts of appeals, if you're looking at your diagram or if you went 1, 2, 3, that should be number 2. There's 12 of these. There is one court of appeals that's on the federal circuit because that basically checks the United States Supreme Court. They don't call witnesses in the Supreme Court. You might put that on there. But put a phone with a slash through it, and then witnesses. Just put a picture of a witness there. All right, that'll be the appellate courts don't call witnesses. All right. Other than that, that's really the only special thing about a court of appeals is they don't call witnesses. Everything else is pretty self-explanatory. The federal level judges are called justices, and they will decide on a vote whether the case should be upheld, um, overturned, or returned to a court case or a trial for a redoing on the hearing. So um, basically, your options at the federal courts of appeals. Okay, we've talked at length about the United States Supreme Court and the types of things that they deal with. So that concludes any information about your federal courts. Okay, so I'm going to pause for a second, and then we're going to go to the state side. Okay, so section 3 is designed to have us discuss the state courts. And if you want to follow along in your text, it's page 58. Page 58 has a great diagram of the state courts, and that we're going to use this to help us write it all out and draw it all up. We've already addressed the issue of the Supreme Court, so we're going to go down to the Intermediate Appeals Court, and these occur in more populous states. So for an intermediate Supreme or intermediate appeals court at the state level, I want you to go see if you can find a picture of one or an address for one and plug it in and identify it as an intermediate appeals court on your notes. For your notes, the state level has 5 different levels. The state court system has 5 different levels, so you might want to number 1 through 5. Number 1 being, of course, the Supreme Court. Number 2 being the immediate appeals court, and then number 3, we're going to go right after. We already have talked in length about appeals courts. It's all the same at the state level too. Then you have your trial courts. Trial courts at the state level are the ones that have original and general jurisdiction. Original meaning they are the first court to hear the case. General meaning they can hear any kind of case. So you can have courts that have 2 different jurisdiction abilities. Okay, so in your trial courts, that's typically what's going to happen. The trial court's going to involve all the people of the court. So, for example, you're going to have bailiffs, you're going to have the judge, you're going to have a jury, you're going to have witnesses, and a court reporter who's going to record everything that you're going to hear and see in the court. Therefore, they can review whatever happened at trial in case there needs to be a situation that involves that. So, please understand that in a trial court, At the state level, you're going to have all of that involved. All of those people are going to be involved. Um, so that's the third level of courts at the state level. Then you're going to get down to the fourth level. These are courts of limited jurisdiction. So, for example, family court, juvenile court, municipal court, probate court, and criminal court. You need to identify all these at the fourth level. I would like you to put an example, uh, some kind of image, draw some kind of image that represents family court, juvenile court, municipal court, probate court, and criminal court. All right, and I'm going to let you pick what those images should be. You can look at and read the brief description for those kinds of courts over here on page 59. And I want you to do the same for the fifth level of courts um, in this state court system, the Justices Court and the Small Claims Court. Again, just read through the brief little examples of what these courts are, and then that'll help you decide on what kind of an image to draw. And please identify them by name and then include some images that represent those types of courts. Okay. I would also encourage you to include any dollar amounts those courts might be associated with, like if they only hear a certain amount of courts. And then when we come back on Wednesday, we're gonna actually watch live court. Um, well, relatively live court when you come back. Okay, so please complete those notes. When you complete those notes, they finish on page 60 because that's where it talks about the probate courts, and that'll help you come up with an image for that. Your notes are done. I want you to next go to your section questions on pages 61, 57, and 54. Answer those questions, please, so we can review them tomorrow as well. When you're done with all this, if you don't quite get them all done, I understand, but I expect you to be working. So there's the end of the notes. There's the end of your assignment. I wish you the best. Please go back and review any of this if you need to, and write down any questions you might have for tomorrow if you want more specific information. Maybe the text didn't give it to you, or maybe my images that I'm asking you to draw weren't specific enough, and that's fine. I'd be happy to answer those questions for you tomorrow since I'm gone today. But do your best. Use your book as your resource. You can also use Google if you want to as well. And we'll talk more tomorrow. Thank you again for giving me an opportunity to meet with some people for our advisory committee. I really appreciate your hard work and your time when I'm not available. All right, thank you. Have a good day.